Hi, so this is the Busy People podcast with busy people around the world. This is my main man, Rabbi Yakov Nagel, and I wanted to just ask a few questions. So we'll just jump straight into it. What do you think with your earlier years for that shape you today in personal and business? Yeah.
Excellent question. So I grew up in Monsey, New York. Basically, from the time I'm a month old, I went to the local yeshivas there. I was in Yeshiva Spring Valley for elementary school. I was in Yeshiva Sharei Torah by Beryl Wines Yeshiva in high school. And then I went off to Eretz Yisrael. I was there for a little over 2 years by Rabbi Tzvi. And from there I ended up in Sharei Torah in Queens. And I was there for 8 years.
So what did your form opinions of your earlier rabbinical or learning things have to do with today, with truth, with artificial intelligence, 3D printing, robotics?
Okay, so let's do one at a time because it's a lot to swallow. First of all, I wasn't like I tell people in this Kehila in Haimish that I wasn't born a rabbi. Okay, before I was a rabbi, I wasn't a rabbi, so I didn't even know that was a field that I was even interested in. It was only actually there was a point in time when I realized that I loved learning Torah. That was only in high school. After 10th grade, I was a serious boy. I took school seriously in high school, not in elementary school, but in high school. And after 10th grade, I went to a camp for the summer. I didn't know what to do. I had a job, whatever, as a waiter. And that camp was called Camp Mudis. And it's run by Mechon Shlomo people. And I was just a job. One of the Rabbeim was there, so he got me that job. He said, be a waiter. If you don't know what you're doing, it might be nice. And there were the way they do it, their system.
I mean, what I'm saying is you got from this job to real estate, so
real estate was later on. I'll tell you how I got to real estate, one step at a time.
Sure.
There's my main profession is Torah. That's what I do most of the time. And I dabbled in real estate. I never was full-time real estate. I dabbled in real estate. But I'll tell you how that happened too. So, but I didn't, at this point, it was in summer of 10th grade, I was in this place called Camp Mudis. What they do is they take boys that are coming from college, very highly educated, intelligent, completely secular people that are curious about Judaism. And they come to this camp for free. And at the camp, there's yeshiva bachrim, nice yeshiva bachrim, who love learning, and they pair them up and they learn with them one-on-one. Anyway, I was a waiter there. I was much younger than the average guy. The guy closest in age was 20 and I was maybe 15, okay? But bottom line is that they just saw me wasting my time or playing basketball, which is what I was into. I used to play electric bass guitar at the time, so I brought that with me. Anyway, but I was kind of not using my time. I had a chavrusa for half an hour. That was what the Rabbi told me to do, and that was it. And then there was one of the yeshiva bachrim who I had nobody to learn with. He said, come sit and learn Gemara the way it's supposed to be. And I learned with this guy. His name is Rabbi Bamberger. I don't know, I think he's a Baal Bus now, but he was like a Ner Yisrael guy, but very serious and into his learning. And I loved learning with him. And we were learning one-on-one as peers. And from there, I developed a much higher interest in learning. Next year, I was already in the highest.
But where do we get to the truth? Because we have
limited time. Don't worry.
No, we're good. I'm just trying to understand where is the camp in this story, the truth of my question of going back to your background to give an answer in even artificial intelligence. What is the camp?
Whatever. First, all that did is it turned me on to learning Torah and wanting to learn Torah. And that trajectory continued through the end of high school. I went to Rabbi Tzvi, which was very unusual. It's like a high-level yeshiva. To come out of 12th grade was very unusual. I was into learning. I was good at learning by that time. Okay?
I met Rabbi Tzvi. He's a great man.
He's a great man.
But I'm saying is, so your love for learning, we understand. Okay. That I know Rabbi for a bunch of years, whatever. My question really is truth. Because from what I understand, you have a philosophical part of you of spirituality to understand today's world's difficulties. Mm-hmm. Some of the world's difficulty is I'm trying to understand the truth with some of the things today. That's what I want to
Okay, got it. Okay, so here's the thing. is I'll tell you what happened. In my 12th grade year, although I enjoyed learning, I was still a 12th grader. It wasn't that serious. But what happened is that there was a person who came to Sharei Torah, Rabbi B'Ain's Yeshiva, after Israel. Very serious boy, very much wanting to learn how to learn, but he was learning disabled. He actually had a very big difficulty in learning. But he was a masmid like anything, like nobody's business. He sat me down and he said, "You got to explain this Gemara to me because I don't get it." And I would explain it, and he says, "I still don't get it. You got to explain it better." And he forced me to explain Gemara, not the straight way, but the backwards way, because that was the only way he could understand. And from there, I learned how to learn a lot, which is sometimes the straight path is not clear to people. They can't understand it. You have to be able to say it from all sides. Why this is this and not that? What's the difference? And you have to explain every step and every logical jump. He never jumped because he had a difficulty, understand? So I had to explain every step and that's kind of when I got verheard by the yeshivas. So there was one of the Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Hartman from Beis Yisrael, he interviewed a lot in Sharei Torah, and he interviewed me. And he said, let's learn this Gemara. We were learning Kedushin at the time. And I told him I read over the Gemara, but I didn't just read the Gemara. I explained every step and every backwards and inside and all around, just from.
So that's how you went to staying in Daf Yomi? No. That's how your Daf Yomi started?
Daf Yomi was later on. But the point being is that he said he would never, he told other people, not me, told other people he never interviewed somebody out of 12th grade high school that was on that level of learning at that time. Okay, and he obviously interviewed modern high schools. But the bottom line is that.
So your truth for learning comes from first learning it backwards, and what does that have to do?
Inside out, and that's
the inside and out of today's world. That's back to my question.
So now you understand the background of it.
So you're saying is learning Gemara backwards gets to understanding people backwards?
It's not just backwards. It's understanding the every step. That when you say A goes to B, you have to understand you're not jumping any steps from getting to A to B. Maybe there's a jump in logic. You have to explain every step of that logic. Why you assume A is this way and not that way. What about B? What about everything? You have to really understand things from all the directions. And that's what I think is in dealing with AI or something like that, or any of the new technologies that exist now that did not exist, is being able to, and the hardest thing to do now is to parse truth from fiction. That's what the avodah is. We're in that world that we have so much that's out there that's fiction, that's made up. And you have to be able to see where they're making these logical jumps. Because AI, explain what I understand AI, not that I'm a bucky in AI, but what was explained to me is that AI has tremendous.
Let me try to explain it because maybe I have a different opinion.
Yeah.
I'll try to explain AI. What I explain on the AI is it's a full computer system with data, computing, and I'm not an expert in this, and obviously I'll study other people. Probably we'll bring on a podcast. But I just wanted to get the Torah perspective from AI. And not just AI, any of these new technologies. As I'll get into my next question. But from what I understand, AI is thousands of gigabytes, of terabytes of computing that they basically learn up these things, and these engineers spend millions of billions of trillions of dollars on basically understanding the computing systems that they put in information, and then you write something, and then they take that something and they write it down. Every question I ask, every single thing I put in, they have it recorded, and they record Louis' thing, Rabbi's thing, different things. So I was just trying to understand the Torah thing, and then my next question would be like the get them, and this might be similar. As I understand, there is people like Flatbush Girl, like different people. Yeah, she's great, but she does bad things because at the end of the day, you put in systems of making things up for money, that you basically make up things for money. You basically not making the point. There's bad and good on both sides. I have friends on both sides of the corner that have done wrong, from that gave gets, that didn't give, and I have friends on both, and people have made up things about both sides. And if you learn the person, you know they're a good person. There's just issues that come from different things. So you as a Bezdin, from the Bezdin, can you explain it to people around the world? What would you say is the form from Bezdin?
Okay, so it's really, like I said, it's a product of how I learn. When you learn, and you develop in your learning, you're always seeing the two opposing opinions. There's always a machlokes, an argument in the Gemara. And from there, you realize the truth in both sides. There's a truth, even though they're at odds with each other, but there's a truth in their perspective that has a truth to it. And the problem is that you have to find out where does that truth end up, and when it comes to practical reality, they can't both be right. So you have to kind of find the path that takes what's right, because every one-sided truth has, let's say, 9 parts truth and 1 part false. And the other side has 9 parts truth and 1 part false. So you got to know how to parse out the false of their version and meld the 2 stories together and realize what the real story is. And from there you can...
So where is the Facebook, Instagram, technology? Where does technology come into? Because I hear even from, I'm not going to say any names, but different people in this community and other communities that I have lived in or visited around the world, and I've been in many places, they different people make up different things. So why do you think is the terminology of opinion? And then they use billboards and they use all these different platforms.
Here's the thing.
And they use different rabbis that they put in papers and things and zachen.
Never believe anything you read. That's always the bottom line. And everything you see on the internet, don't believe it, because it's only presenting. Here's what it is. There's something called, in English, confirmation bias, which really, that's how AI works. If you type something into AI, they're not going to be critical of it. They're going to say, what a great thing. They're going to butter you up and say, wow, that's fascinating. And everyone buys it, hook, line, and sinker, because you have to know what their drive is. Their drive is to keep you engaged. They want more time on the computer. That's what they need. But the more they butter you up, the more they say what you're saying is so true, and they bring proofs to you, the more you'll be convinced that you're right. And that's what AI does. And that's,
but I'm saying, what is
truth?
What is the truth from the Bezdin side? Let's get down to the nuts and bolts.
The Bezdin side.
Bezdin side from, is it learning? Is it a specific knowledge? Because at the end of the day, from what I understand, a lot of different arguments, it takes 2 to tangle and 2 to untangle. Bottom line, if we're going nuts and every single conversation or argument took 2 people, of one said something and another one said something, and somebody instigated, like people try on me.
Right. And there is no situation that I've come across in my entire period of dealing with Gittin, which is spanning over 20 years. When I was first learning with Rav Nata Greenblatt and being here and watching and observing him. And then after he retired and I took over, and then he passed away soon after when he was really old. And the bottom line is, all those years, and I'm dealing with the pre-Gittin and after, there is no one story. There is no one story. There's no one-sided. There's no scenario where it didn't, like you say, take 2 to tango. They were fighting. Both sides, if you get them in an honest moment, they will admit that there are things they did wrong. There's no scenario where one side was the only one doing wrong and the other one was only doing right. It never happens. There's always mistakes made, maybe miscommunications, misunderstandings. Those are all things that are definitely part of the picture.
And where do you see technology today, with all these different technologies that have come out, the good and bad? Where does it affect the Gittin?
It affects the Gittin in a lot of ways, because, like, let's say people who are using social media to convince people to give a get, it's a very powerful tool and it can work. But on the other hand, a lot of times they're paid to present only one side, and anytime you're being paid, there's a concept called hashoichad ya'avar einei pikchem, that when you're being bribed, you're blind in what you're not seeing clearly. So that's one of the key components, is that you have to be clean in that area. And the problem is, it's very hard. I don't blame anybody, because it's very hard to turn down so much money when it's very hard. And very few people are completely independent. You know what I'm saying? That they can say, no, I'm just doing it for the truth. They have to be independently wealthy, that nothing matters to them. When that happens, we got hope. But until that happens, the sides that you're reading, he's only going to paint one side of the picture. They'll use the AI to confirm that bias and to make it sound super good.
So then why do I read all these things and hear of situations of my rabbi said this, he said this, and this bezdin with this rabbi, and then another rabbi said something else? Where do you find that Rabbanim getting messed up?
The problem is that people need to train themselves in anytime they're given this opportunity to they're being told one thing, they need to have a way. I mean, rabbis are usually very good people. And then part of being a good person is being a trusting person. Part of being a trusting person is that when somebody tells you something, your natural inclination is to believe them fully. And that's the
and is that because,
and if you're only hearing from one side, then they're not hearing the full picture. And that's look, I'm that way. I know my bias. So therefore, I trained myself that I don't come to any conclusions until I speak to everybody involved. Because that's the only way. You can't, because every time I talk to you, I say, yo, Louis, you're so right. I get it, and I understand you, and my heart's with you, and I feel you. And then, when there's this other side of the dispute, and it's like, oh, wait a second, I never thought of it that way. That's a piece of information that was not given to me. That's where you get a fuller picture. The bottom line is that rabbis are not.
And when you get the fuller picture, let's just say both parties, you're sitting in this shul or place, and you go both sides to people.
Yeah.
How often do you find that both are wrong?
They're always, here's the truth, well, I see it. They're always both right, partially. They're always both wrong, partially. And there's always something that they could do better. And there's always conclusions that are being jumped to by both sides. Both sides assume the worst of the other person. They're not getting divorced because they give people benefit of the doubt. You understand? So there's a natural flaw in every divorce, because that's where it starts. They stopped giving the other person the benefit of the doubt. And even if you don't give the benefit of the doubt, you say, well, what are they? Come on. They're not, oh, come on. You're a fool if you think that they meant it. Still, you don't know. So you have to know how to parse between what you know and what you're assuming.
And what advices would you give to these different rabbis or different
Not just the rabbis. It's the couples.
The couples.
Go back to the couples.
What would you give advice in 20 years of dealing in experience? Give me something, if you could think in your memory bank, that somebody who's going and is just getting, like even myself, who's just getting married, what would they do from day one while they're dating, or while they're, once they get engaged? They got engaged, or they're getting married now, they're going down the chuppah. Right after the first night, do you think it's intimacy? Do you think it's certain things are financial? Do you think it's certain shuls, or certain hobbies together? What do you think if you would give?
Absolutely. Well, all those things are true. But what the first step is to always see the positive in the other person. That's why you're marrying them. And always remind yourself of the positive of that other person. And even when you see something that bothers you or annoys you, you should always know that very likely is for your own good. And you just don't want to admit it. But if something annoys you about your spouse, it's something in you that needs work. It's the facts. It's what I've seen. That's my experience. And you need to always have things that you do together that you both enjoy. You also always have to know how to laugh with each other and to have a light relationship sometimes. Laugh at funny things that happen in your lives. And these are things that carry yourself in a marriage, Because marriage is stressful. There's always stress. I could show you 9 out of 10 marriages that are breaking up. It's not because everything is going hunky-dory. You know what I mean? If they're living a good life, they're successful financially, they have kids that are no problems and good kids. Everything's.
I'm asking the question about the hunky-dory, about the schnitzel that didn't go well. I'm not.
You're right.
I'm asking you,
No, but
what
I'm
could,
saying there's
but what could
always
somebody, but what somebody, they didn't have intimacy, let's just say in 6 months, right? That's crazy, but it happens. It happens that for whatever reason, the guy cheated, he got messed over, he went to the army, lack of trust. It could be in the IDF now. It could be in Poland. It could be in Ukraine. We're asking for general, not just
All I'm saying
religious,
is that
ultra-Orthodox. I'm curious to know of the bad. I'm seriously asking for the general public because somebody can learn. So
Right, of course. The point being is that obviously life has stresses. And the key things that you can really help people is like always try and remember what it is that you love about your spouse and think about that, contemplate on it, and be grateful to God that you have that person to be with. Because what all people think is that they're, it's like, oh, I'm so miserable, whatever. And they don't think that, let me tell you, divorce is always, that my experience, people are very rarely less miserable than being married. Okay? Very rarely. The people, they're just lonely then, and it's like, and they're blaming each other and blaming themselves. And it's not a good life. So people think that the grass is going to be greener when they're divorced, or there's someone over the horizon that has all milas and no chisronos, only good qualities, not even one bad quality. They're just like waiting for the phone call. They're like, meet them in a second. Like that's what we call la la land. You're in dreamland. It's not how it works. Life is real, and a lot of times you just need to find that this person right in front of you is exactly who Hashem wants you to be with. And you just have to come to terms with it. And if there's stuff that annoys you about it, then that's something that you need to work on. It's a message for you. And you have to, again, always give the benefit of the doubt and always not jump to conclusions, because that's always how these things start. And it snowballs from there. And that's the sweetest advice I could give to people. And I'm not saying I have a perfect marriage, not at all. But
I know by seeing and knowing you for a good 5-10 years, I know it's not perfect. But is it? Let me just try to ask for myself, right? For all the guys and girls that are dating, and then in business life, where do you see that? Let's just say from your business perspective, right? Because you're both businessmen at the end of the day and businesswomen. Then you both brought different business. Yeah, you might say from Orthodox, right? And all these things, your career and her career. Mm-hmm. Where do you see, even myself, within my own journey, if you have money, don't have money, where do you see that both sides that have to tangle, that they have to bring truth to?
Okay, the truth is that everyone, again, like I said, there's a tefillah that's from Rabbi Melech that he writes in the beginning, that everyone needs to, if we only can train ourselves to see mailas chaverinu, the good qualities that our friends have. And that's not just, and that's such an important thing. And like every day I wake up and I see the mailas that my wife has, her ability to be so hardworking, her drive, all those things, there are things that I look at and I thank Hashem for, and I appreciate that she has those huge qualities that I don't have the same drive as her. I don't have the same ability to push to hardworking, like getting down on your hands and knees and doing the hard stuff. That's amazing, and that's something that you can appreciate.
But sometimes the woman has less. Sometimes and most women today are not like your wife. So your wife is
unusual, maybe.
And you're unusual when it comes from the soft side. So right. A lot of guys are more tougher.
It can be anyway, but the point being is that I never met anybody who doesn't have unbelievable milas, great qualities, and it's just a matter of looking for them and seeing them. And that's the bottom line. Like everybody who's like in a stressful marriage, they always discount the positives. Like, wait a second, there's no positives in this person? Seriously? They're not, like, come on. You married them for some reason. That obviously means that there's something that you saw.
But I'm saying it's like, but wait a
That's
second.
the point.
If you're going into the milas of each person, but the problem is that with contracts, right? At the end of the day, it comes from contracts of gittin, right? Ksuva, they call it today a what's the
Prenup.
Prenup.
Yeah.
Where do you see somebody's business sides? All these law cases
Look.
that go on, and then this question, and then we'll go on to stuff. We'll go on to other things. Because I have 3 more questions.
Okay, so we're gonna have to wind up because I have to leave now. But here's the story. As far as the business side of it, you're already missing the boat when you think of a relationship, of a marriage as a business transaction, and that's really the first mistake. It's like everyone in a business transaction is like, I'm going into this transaction because what's in it for me.
Okay,
And the
let me
marriage mindset needs to be what's
So
in
where's-
it for you,
where's-
not me.
Okay,
I'm looking for you.
Let me just try to figure this out. So one second. So where in Rabbi's career, in properties, in real estate, in giving different advice to other rabbis in ways to find money making activities, as you're going to a thing, you're going to go and now give some learning, some words of advice. I find that a lot of rabbis, they don't give love, or they get so caught up in money because they didn't make money. Where do you find that successful rabbis, as you're going to a group now, successful people that are successful rabbis also found ways to make money within their career, or their different ways?
Listen, it's like, I think for that you really need their living emunah to always remember that your parnasa, no matter who you are, comes from Hashem. And even if you're a rabbi, you once you start making the mistake that my parnasa comes from my balabas, then you're not a rabbi anymore. That's because it's not from God. And then all of a sudden you're just a poyel. You're working for that guy, that balabas. So the step one is that even rabbis need to learn living emunah or something like that, to remember that parnasa comes from Hashem. Even if you're a rabbi, it comes from Hashem. If you're a businessman, it comes from Hashem. It always comes from Hashem. It's not my strength. It's not because I buttered up this guy. You always have to, that's what keeps you honest and keeps you to the truth.
And then what would you be advice to teens, 20-year-old guys or girls to understand of today's technologies, of the artificial intelligence, 3D robotics, of getting into career, college versus no college? What would I mean, obviously we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars here right now. We're not having this.
Yeah, I want you to know, my son has a successful business. He says anybody who went to a college of higher learning, like one of those like Ivy Leagues, he's not hiring him. No job for you, because you're just drinking the Kool-Aid and you have you don't think for yourself.
So you're anti.
So that's my son's perspective. I respect that.
What's your perspective?
My perspective is a little nuanced. I think that everybody needs to worry about the same thing that we've been talking about, what we call confirmation bias. Everyone's in your environment influences you. If you're in those Ivy League colleges, you have to be wary of what's influencing you from your environment. The same thing, if you live in Trump land, you got to be wary that that's influencing you to be pro-Trump. You're influenced by your environment. The only thing that you got to do is you always have to remember, like, I know what's real and what's
what would be so that's one
influence from the side, outside influences that are pushing me to think certain ways.
What would be 5 books you would recommend to somebody, Jewish or non-Jewish?
The 5 books of Moses, right there.
No, but that's one.
There.
That's only Bible. So what besides is Muna books? What do you read on a daily book besides Chumash? What else are you reading? Gemara.
Gemara. I always feel that I feel Gemara trains you to think critically, which is the most critical thing nowadays. Okay, so there's Chumash because it's the source of life. There's Gemara, which gives you critical thinking skills and every skill in terms of knowledge of the world. Okay, it's like there's hafachba, the kulba, look it and turn it over, you'll find everything in it. I really believe that. In addition, you always need to have some sefer that talks to your personal heart. And for everyone, that's different. Some people, like Mesilas Yesharim, talks to their soul. Some people, Hasidus talks to their soul. Find that book that talks to your soul. That's not for one person. And then, you know what? Be open. Leave 2 books that somebody will introduce. Say, hey, can you learn this with me? And say, oh, let's give it a shot.
And then one more question on chinuch.
Yeah.
What would be your advice as we started? Now the guy has kids. He has kids. What would be your general? Are you pro chinuch today as skill sets as we discussed? As at your table, love with just give love first. What would be your approach, or what would you say of schooling today, of the whole system? As I'm anti. As Rabbi knows, I'm anti because of my
traumas.
Just not because I just don't. I think it's propaganda, and I think not only that. I think that they need to lead with skill sets of men and women. What do you say to average people all over the world in chinuch?
Chinuch is a hard field because I don't call myself an expert, but I do believe that we had this conversation in the past. The idea of leading with love is so huge, and it's more than that. It's believing, not just loving somebody, it's believing in their koiches. Like I said, everybody has unbelievable strengths, and you have to connect to that. And you have to believe it yourself, and then they'll believe it. And that's how you get people to a different level. And that's, to me, what ultimate chinuch is. Really try to understand the person and see what's so special about that person, and tell it to them. Let them hear it. Let them see what you really see in them that they couldn't see for themselves. That's my
What would be one piece of advice you would give in real estate?
In real estate, in real estate, it's the same thing. Don't let... when you're syndicating deals, for instance, you also could get bribed by the money that you get from it. So you have to always be aware, because you get money up front and you don't really care about the asset so much. Always the way it works in real estate is that you're there to be a connector to another person, to make them have parnasa. So you always have to make sure you have skin in the game. That keeps you honest. That's my advice in real estate.
And what would you give advice to people? Should they hire Louis?
Louis is great. You have to find the right skill for it, but Louis has great skills. All right?
Thank you, Rabbi.
A pleasure. Okay.